MMA, LaTB. You want to know who to put it in your parlay? LaTB. You want to know our DraftKings stay away? LaTB. So, who has the Leslie Smith underdog pick? Who was the Mexican dude and the lesbian chick? Everybody saying me. Let's vote with the bean. Who's that out there living the dream? Let's vote.
Welcome back, everybody, for the second time around. Just to let you know, this is going to be a tribute show to our previous show. We've definitely done this a few times.
To our last show.
The greatest show we ever done.
We don't have a young Jamie or a Chin. We don't have audio people.
We are audio people.
We don't have New York Rick.
We're
just having to learn this as we go.
Yeah, we do it because we love it.
Put in our 10,000 hours, become really good.
Right. So, it was we're going to definitely do
something we are good at.
Can.
Talking
right.
shit about UFC and picking a little DraftKings. Picking a little DraftKings on UFC. So
that's why we felt we still owed it to the fans to get something out there. Luckily now, the weigh-ins have already happened.
And we thought about lying to you guys. We thought about just saying, this is such a sketchy fight with weight. We wanted to come in with a late show to not lead you off course because a lot of fighters are having issues. We wanted to pop our own collar, but we decided to be honest. Honesty is the best policy.
Right. And we saw you guys looking for our last podcast, and unfortunately, it's just new formatting and whatever. So
it was such a great show.
It really was.
Rest
2.5 hours. Woo!
Rest in peace show.
It's a long show.
I don't even know if I should say rest in peace show. It's not appropriate right now.
So, with the MMA verse, I guess all of the good fights that we talked about multiple times over, which ones got made that really stuck out to us. Cerrone Till, that was a while ago, but there was a few recent ones that...
Oh, Ngannou, Overeem.
That's going to be a smoke show. Somebody's getting put to sleep. Real big step up for Ngannou, but hey, what do you think? Who do you have?
I have Francis right now.
I know. That's my heart. That's where my heart goes, but I don't know if that's where
You doubt. I've never, ever doubted the Black Beast. You do question his ground game and have
the Predator.
I'm sorry. That was so racist. The Predator, Francis Ngannou. You have doubted his ground game in the past. Overeem has a better ground game than, was it Henrique he went against? That
was a true test. That was his debut in the UFC, and it was against the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu state champ. And I thought the wrestling was going to get to Ngannou once I saw that he had rudimentary stand-ups.
Was that his debut or his second fight?
That was his debut. After watching that and realizing he could get through that level of wrestler, and Henrique's come back and actually done well in the division. I think Ngannou is only getting better being at that UFC gym as well. Everybody who's going there is saying that's the state of the art. We've seen some countdown shows for this 216 card, and they've kind of shown what the gym is, and it's state of the art. They have rehabilitation, the one that we shall not talk about, Mac May, he ended up training at the UFC center before that fight, and he went 10 rounds. So they profiled a little bit of that.
They showed it a lot.
Kevin Lee's also a part of that. That's going to be a factor. There's just Ngannou's at that gym. But the Reem has really changed his style as of late and gotten away from slugging so much. And even then, I think the Reem has better striking. It's just that Chin is always susceptible, especially at that weight division. And it's a really fun fight because it is a big step up, and this gives title contention. If Ngannou gets through this, he's got the next shot for the belt within a fight, if not the next fight after that. Reem's a big step up. Can't wait to see that fight. What do you think is going to happen? Obviously, Ngannou being who you're signing with. I'm going with Overeem.
For me, the best Overeem looked was his last fight against Verdum. The best he's looked in a while. I shouldn't say the best he's ever looked, obviously, but the last fight against Verdum.
Yeah.
That being said, I personally felt like Verdum won that fight.
It was a split. It was controversial.
I didn't think it was all that great of a fight.
Agreed.
So
But
I think the Predator is young. He has something to prove. I do think it's going to be the biggest test of his ground and defense. Just staying on his feet. I think standing on the feet, though, I think Overeem's been found out. I think Ngannou's camp has that all day. There's so much tape out there.
Man. He moves so well for a big
with
man.
enormous hands. Everybody, like Joe Rogan, all the guys, they all talk about and they have pictures shaking Francis Ngannou's hand.
Yeah.
Because it's like a tiny little...
It's Andre the Giant.
Yeah, like a huge hand. And he's not built the same way as other guys that are as big as him. Yeah.
Yeah.
He is a special... I
agree.
I think he's an obvious champion. I can't wait to watch him against... Who is he, Stipe?
Yeah. That's going to be a hell of a fight once we get there. Eventually, these are all going to happen.
This is the other thing, too, that I love about this fight. If Overeem wins... It sends Overeem back on the track, then he fights Stipe again for the championship, and Francis is young, so it doesn't really ruin anything for him, especially in such a lacking division.
Agreed.
Speaking of the other fights, the other big boy fight that matters is on this card, right?
Yes, the Verdum.
Yes, yeah, that
Lewis,
matters.
That's a fun fight. Other fights, though, quickly before we get to the card, was Frankie Edgar, Max Holloway. That's a hell of a fight. Is so fun. Frankie Edgar is kind of, I feel like, one of his last shots. He might be stepping away soon. He's just had one of the longer careers and always taking damage well, but...
How much damage do you want to take?
Exactly. It's one of those point in times where he might get back to coaching, but... We know what we're getting when in that fight, and it's going to be an amazing fight all the way around. Frankie Edgar is a force to be reckoned with. Does Max Holloway have the answer? What do you think off the top of your head?
I really do think he does. I think Max Holloway is the real deal, and I think he can fight a few fights at this division and move up. He's a young guy. I think he's the future. I love Max Holloway, and I love Frankie. I'm all about the answer. I think he has an answer to most things. It's just unfortunate. There's always a Jose Aldo in that division for him. And now it's a Max Holloway, obviously.
Nice. So, a quick shout out to Kamaru Usman for retweeting us at LaTB on Twitter, Lesbo and the Bean. If you haven't subscribed, remember to subscribe. We're also on YouTube. Remember to subscribe so you can get these to date because we are a little late breaking here. And we are going to get it to you when we can, eat right before the fight, so you can make your best possible.
Something that Bean always likes to talk about is late breaking doesn't make any sense.
It's an oxymoron. And we've had a little bit of a
and by late breaking, we mean we're late at breaking it.
Exactly. So figure it out. It makes sense if you kind of think about it. So remember to follow us. We also have an Instagram.
And we just want to throw in, our thoughts to Vegas. Like, we just want to throw that in. Like, send good energy out there to those peeps and
agreed.
Everything going on. And, may the truth come out one day about everything. And may these people have some kind of solace and their horrible luck. Fuck. Yeah, fuck. Anyway.
Do you think that the arena is going to be affected?
Vegas, I was about to say,
and there's about to be a UFC in Vegas, 216. Do you feel like the attendance is going to be affected over this tragedy that just recently happened at the Mandalay Bay?
I am really wondering how it's going to affect the card, and I was trying to... I'm sketchy anyway. I'm a sketchy person, and this is what I was other thing.
You're sketched out.
I'm sketched out.
You're not a sketchy person, just
yeah. I'm not a sketchy person. I'm sketched out. I think that it just the terror act of this. If you want to think like, well, what does this change for America? Like, look at the things that changed after 9/11 with flying planes and whatever. The thing that. And how we all have to stand in these crazy, crazy lines, everything, with Homeland Security, blah. One thing that this has changed just for, I think, people is, do you want to stand in any...
mass event?
Well, not just massive event, so it's less than just UFC, but like if you're going to me, in my head, is a place like Times Square, where people can stand over you.
Oh, uh-huh.
in that kind of format where you're like down, locked into city streets. Like, so for the UFC, for the first time in my life, I think nosebleed sections are where you want to sit.
Or that's who you have to watch out for.
Oh my God. Bad joke.
Too soon. Sorry. So, being at Vegas, I don't think there's anything to worry about because guess what? Security is going to be through the roof right now at any one of those events. We are going to be indoors, and I love the hashtag that was on the weigh-in scale today, hashtag Vegas Strong. If I had the funds to get there, I would still go.
I would still go too. I wouldn't let anything deter me.
No, because nobody's going to deter me.
I hear a couple of people talking like, "Oh, we were going to go to Vegas," and if I had the cash right now,
right,
I'd still be in Vegas,
Yep.
and I'd be like, "What?
Yep.
What?
Yep. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, moving on, I guess.
Moving
on.
on.
What way do you end that? What way do you segue that? It's awful. It's a horrible event.
Right. So definitely don't worry about that too much. It's the way life moves on.
I feel like
life
for our real thoughts on the event, tune in to our other channel on the Conspiracy Network. No, I'm just kidding. We don't have any of that. Like,
we don't look for it. Don't look for it.
I feel awful for the families, though, of the people there. And it would be that yin and yang of the best time of your life at your favorite concert to such a horrible tragedy. So
with conspiracies, Ray Borg supposedly being sick as of like 3 weeks ago. He has recently made weight at 214 pounds, actually coming in a pound under because this is a belt, so it's 215 pounds even he has to weigh. So therefore, I feel like the conspiracy that he was scared or wasn't sick might be falling short. Like he really was sick, and I feel like he knows that he needs to be at his 100% to even have a chance against DJ, and he was at 85% and said, "No, guys, I gotta wait a little while. I'll do it, but hold on." And I think that gives him that's kind of what I'm thinking now. Does that change my point of view in the fight? No, but we'll get there. That'll be at the main event here at UFC 216. It's going to be aired on Fight Pass.
What do you feel about Kevin Lee yesterday being 19 pounds still to make weight?
Also a conspiracy. I don't know. Was that official? Because I thought that was just kind of thrown out there.
Ariel Helwani said it, and I know he says things that he pretty much has sources for a lot of things.
I think that...
Is that a lot as a wrestler or fighter? Is that a lot
for a guy that's already that lean? A guy that's already that lean, yeah, that's a lot. But he can also be doing a...
Because to me, I'm like, okay, 3 months from now, I got that 19 pounds. Don't you threat? No threat.
What I was about to say is that there's various methods of losing weight, and a way to do that is water loading, where you actually overload your system with water for like a day or two, and then the second day you take natural diuretics like green teas and other stuff like that, and you won't pop because it's just teas, and you lose an extra 5-10 pounds of water on the way out. Like you get a tornado or a one-way valve going. Once you get the hose going, you're just gonna let it empty out the pool. And I feel like.
But does he have 19 pounds of water on him? Is the question.
I think that he could have. He could have.
He looks so lean.
I agree, he looks lean, but he's still a young man, and I feel like he's already moved up from 45 and looked way better at 155.
He will have those problems eventually with age. He's gonna hit up that wall.
He'll go up to 170 because he's that type of
that wall
mass.
Anyos. I feel like fighters can all do it for a certain amount of time, and then your body's like, no more.
Exactly, but I don't think he's there yet. He's still very, very young, and
how old is he? 27?
24.
He's a baby. He's a baby.
So,
yeah. I'm so excited for 216.
This is gonna be a 13.
There's so much
card.
Other shit going on in the fight world, you guys, but we have to get into this card.
Oh yeah. So it's gonna be
because you know we get off track sometimes. So
and we enjoy doing that, so that's why we're gonna chug it away with a 13 fight card. We're gonna start at from the bottom up, and we're starting off the night on Fight Pass. Then we're gonna go to FX, then pay-per-view. Matt Schnell versus Marco Antonio Beltran at 125 pounds, the flyweight division. This is a classic wrestler to a gritty scrapper in Beltran. Beltran has really underperformed coming off of the UFC Latin America show. He is 31 years old and 5'8" to Schnell's 27 years old and 5'8". The reach advantage is going to go to Schnell by 3 inches almost at 72 inches to Beltran's 69.5. Both of these guys are coming off of 2-fight losing streaks. Schnell, though, is being a little more dramatic in him being clearly finished. Beltran, though, it was one of those fights that, as of late, I feel like his corner didn't let him stand up out of the second round. I feel like he tapped out on the stool, but he was getting the daylight beat out of him by Sandoval, the team Alcantara. It was a corner stop. Before that, Beltran also had a heel hook submission loss to Joe Soto, but Joe Soto asked for that fight because Beltran's ground game isn't that good. He really is a sprawl and brawl, tries to keep it up, but his kickboxing it's not that powerful or fast. He can take a punch, and that's not the best for your career, but he has made changes as of late. I feel like he's been coming up to the States. I really like Beltran being the Mexican fighter. I like his tenacity and will, but I do think that Schnell's wrestling, fundamental wrestling, is better. And those TKOs came against guys for Schnell against Hector Sandoval by ground and pound, and his debut in the UFC against Rob Font. Both of those are heavy hitters compared to Beltran. Beltran just doesn't possess that type of power. So I don't necessarily think that the knockout's going to be there. And I feel like Schnell, if most people see something on Beltran, it's you can take him down and control him on top. Schnell's wrestling is going to really play. He really likes to shoot a lot in fights. I might have Schnell in a couple counter move plays here. He's the slight favorite at minus 225, and I just see a better all-around fighter. The worst thing Schnell can do here is try to stand with him. I think he takes a smart route because these guys are fighting for a contract here. And I got Schnell decision. What do you think is going to be going on here?
I am going to stay with the Lesbo and the Bean rule of staying away from this fight. Because right now I have Beltran decision. I don't think there's any money to be made on either fighter. I think it's going to be kind of a boring fight because the only way for Schnell to win is to hold him. Yep. And that's no points when you just sit and hold. The only way for Beltran to win is to stand and throw with him. He doesn't throw a bunch of volume. He doesn't throw a whole bunch of volume. He picks his shots okay, and that would be the worst idea for Schnell to do. I have to think if we know this, Schnell's team knows this, and that he has to get him down and use I think it was just of recent kind of 6 months to a year that there was a fighter who had lost like 3 in a row or something, and he came back and knocked somebody out. Who was it? It was some white friggin' wrestling guy, one of the older guys, and then he got his foot caught in the cage. Jake Ellenberger. Yep. That's kind of how I feel like with all these wrestling type guys like Schnell. So I think he has to use it in this fight, but then Jake went out and knocked the guy out, so who knows? I'm going to go with Beltran decision. I will not put either fighters on my DraftKings.
That might be a good call. That is a rule that's really helped us out on a lot of cards.
But I think Schnell's got a weak, iffy old chin.
Yeah.
And I think if he goes for the takedown, Beltran's team's got to know that he's going to be going for that takedown and try to clip him on that weak chin. Beltran does have enough power to knock him out.
Woo. Moving on to the next fight, going to a preliminary bout, and I'm just going to say that I am shocked and amazed at the kind of way that they stack this card with the fights that are on these undercards compared to what's on the pay-per-view is just a little mind-boggling at times. But moving on to middleweight, 185 pounds, we had Brad Tavares fighting against Thales Leites. This is 2 veterans going at it. Leites being spotted in his last 3 fights, losing only in his last 3 to Cristiano Jutko in a decision, and then as of late, he beat Sam Alvey in a decision. Alves having the reach advantage by 4 inches to Brad Tavares, but also Leites being 7 years elder to Tavares. Tavares is coming in with the use. He's coming off of a 2-fight winning streak against Magalhães in a split decision, and then 2 months ago, Elias Duradoa, who definitely a lot of people are on that bandwagon, so Tavares has shown that his chin has can still hold up, even though that's the biggest thing I'm worried about Brad Tavares is his chin. He has all the physical attributes, but he gets rocked in every single one of his fights, and he has good recovery, but there's a point in time that it's not going to be there, and I don't know if you can ever make your chin better. Moving up in weight usually can help out, and he's done that. No, I think actually he's moved down. I think he used to be 205, so... Though with Leites, what you have to worry about with him is a wicked ground game. He's definitely X level. He's coming out of Nova União, so his takedown defense has been good. He's shown it as of late, and even in that precision picking apart of Sam Alvey, because guess what? Those leg kicks didn't just manifest out of thin air. Thales Leites had to throw them, and his striking looks very Nova União-ish. I don't think Tavares is going to want to go to the ground with Leites, because Leites on the ground, Tavares can hold his own, but Leites is another level. And I feel like earlier this week, I really had Tavares thinking the athleticism and his chin was going to hold up in it, but the more and more I keep looking at it, Leites has, I feel like, a couple better wins and just shown, even at his advanced age, that his craftiness can get it through it. He can go to a decision, so I'm not worried about his gas tank. With Tavares, he slows down more of the two because he tends to be more athletic in his fights. And I'm switching from earlier in the week. I had Tavares' decision, moving that over to Leites' decision. All the way around, still see a decision coming this way. Anything that you want to throw in on this fight?
I totally disagree still. I think Leites is on his way out and Tavares is on his way up. I think Tavares is one of the guys that's the future of UFC. All of his piss poor performances almost happened 3 years ago, like where he just had that weak chin. I think he's come together on everything with that. The Elias Theodorou fight, one thing about Elias that can be said, he seems to stifle every fighter. He seems to really make every fighter look
he's tricky,
shitty in the ring. Yeah. He has that ability like no other fighter of recent memory, that it might not be in a super exciting fight because he has this way of counter moving everything they do, and I felt like Brad had an interesting way of handling that. I think he's got to be prepared for what is it? Oh, there's no nickname for Leites?
Nope. No. Thales Leites.
Okay. Anyways, I think Brad is just now hitting his stride of his career.
He's at his 29, his peak.
I think he's just hitting, I think like the peak
starting
years.
It.
He's just starting it, just feeling his, and
he's had a bunch of fights too. They're both experienced. This is the second fight of the night, by the way. Both of these guys are over 10 fights in the UFC.
So I'm going the opposite way, and I think it's going to be points. I don't know if it's a necessity to put either guy on your DraftKings, but I think you could, to me, I won't have Leites on anything. I don't see it going. I don't see him finishing. I can see Brad finishing, and I don't see Tavares getting finished. So that's what my opinion is on the fight, because I have Tavares' decision.
I'm thinking I'm going to stay away from this one. There's definitely other spots to make a little more money that in this decision we're going to need to be looking for finishes if we want to be the returning jukebox champion here at LaTB. Just throwing that back out there.
Just a reminder.
Just so everyone knows, they're current first place for a whole week. Moving on to the next fight, we have a secondary showing for some very young prospect fighter at flyweight, 125 pounds. We have
you guys missed the excitement of this, so we'll just go ahead and tell you that we are Leslie Smith underdog pick of the week.
So we have Baliatov versus John Moraga, and Baliatov is coming off of a perfect record, 14-0, a Russian fighter fighting out of Fight Club Beirut. I think he has come to New York somewhere. He's going to be the younger fighter at 29 years old to John Moraga's 33. He's also going to come in an inch shorter with a 1-inch reach disadvantage to John Moraga. Definitely the experience level by far. John Moraga here. Baliatov, or Gladiator as we're going to know him from now on, is coming in with a perfect record, but the level of competition is vastly lower. His last win in the UFC was to Lauza, who is a great prospect. It was a decision, and Belyatov was known to come in, or was known for his knockouts and finishes, because in other organizations, the caliber isn't as high, so he has a very diverse spinning attack. He pushes people up to the fence really well, throws spinning elbows from the inside, has a great gas tank, can do it for 3 rounds. I don't know if I've seen him go 5, but even in his last pace versus Lauza, you could see that he was gassed, but it wasn't stopping him from going to the ground, and I don't know if he's confident in his ground game enough, or I don't know if that's why he's so open in throwing these type of strikes, but John Moraga is the next level wrestler, next level competitor. His losses as of late, he's coming off of a win as of late to Mokhathria in a decision 3 months ago, but prior to that, he lost a decision to Pettis, Nicolau in a split decision, and Benavidez in a decision. Just Benavidez number 2 in the division.
And Pettis is what, 4 or 5 right now?
He's way higher than people initially thought. He's definitely a craftier fighter than most people give him. We're going to have John Moraga being a huge underdog here, and I just do not see it. I think that spinning attack, if John Moraga, the longer this fight goes, the more John Moraga takes over. I think if John Moraga gets takedowns, which he usually does in fights, he can really slow down Belyatov, where that spin doesn't come as fast and not as powerful. And we know John Moraga can go a heavy 3 rounds. We've seen it multiple times over at the highest calibers. John Moraga, though, I do feel like he is, if not he's starting to come down off of his peak potentially in his career, because he has had a long career at 17-6. I think that they're trying to build up Belyatov, the UFC is, with Moraga, but as you already heard before, how the Lesbo feels. This is our underdog pick of the week, because we both feel like John Moraga's the value play. He's one of the cheapest on DraftKings at, I believe, 6,900, maybe 7,000. He's going to be scattered in a bunch of my picks, because I feel like at very least John Moraga goes to decision with a bunch of takedowns. Anytime you spin, that level of Moraga's wrestling can get to your back, and I feel like that's going to play out in a couple fights this night. This is going to start it off where we're going to see wrestling stopping spinning attacks. How do you feel specifically about this fight?
I agree. Moraga is the Leslie Smith underdog pick. The reason is because I just don't see this fight being a finish, and he's so cheap that, and I kind of think it's crazy for a guy with no UFC experience, but we see this over and over again with DraftKings. I think you go with the guy with the experience here, that even if he loses it, he's not going to be finished, and for the value, you're going to get that 30 or 40 points, and maybe you'll get the decision victory as well, so you end up with the 70 points, and you just got a cheap fighter. He's not going to get a finish. Moraga's not going to get a KO. I don't see that happening here, but I think your money will be safe, so you can afford a little DJ magic.
That's exactly it.
A little DJ magic.
You're going to need those, because we do have some higher priced fighters, but the 9,200 that Belyatov is in the second fight against the actual caliber opponent that he has makes no sense. People that are jumping on that is only for a price tag, and that's why you listen in to LaTB. You're getting these insights that
Lesbo and the Bean
are on point at all times. Hashtag
so that's
easy
our
money.
Leslie Smith's underdog pick.
So moving on.
We usually give it to you at the end for those of you who turn off right after you hear that.
And for your waiting just for that, we know that we have specific listeners that are just waiting to get to that, and then they don't care about the rest of it. But there's more money to be had.
Yeah, and you got to stay for the wager gauger.
Oh, damn.
That's the Beans wager gauger.
Feel like it should be picked up by Jim Gillette.
A little breadcrumb.
Yep, that's called foreshadowing for the audience out there. Moving on to the next fight, we have a heavyweight bout between Walt Harris versus Mark Godbeer. This is definitely 2 up-and-comers in the division. The more proven fighter as of late is going to be Walt Harris, coming off of a 2-fight winning streak. Both of those wins coming off of knockouts to the opponents like Chase Sherman, the Vanilla Gorilla, and as of 3 months ago, Cyril Asker. Prior to that, Walt Harris lost a split decision to Aduramyov, and Also to Sol Paleli, which that was where I was really iffy with Walt Harris's career, because Sol Paleli shouldn't be beating people like Walt Harris. Walt Harris has every physical attribute at this division to put anybody to sleep. He can move like a 185er. He's really light on his toes. Unfortunately, with that type of athleticism with that weight, is that his gas tank does tend to weaken, and that's how Paleli got him. And in that split decision, it was his gas tank that finished. But if this fight gets out of the first round, people have a chance. In the first round, though, Walt Harris can sneak a right hand in there. He throws it very fast. He throws his weight into it. He likes, he has good boxing coming out of American Top Team. Godbeer is good. They're going to be equaling in height, but Walt Harris is going to have a 6-inch reach advantage, 81 inches to Godbeer's 75 inches. Both of them coming in at 6'4", with the age advantage is going to be Godbeer, a year younger. And we still got wild dogs moving around in Florida. Impacts, they sound pretty intense. And I don't hear the dogs barking for Mark Godbeer at all here. I have Walt Harris.
The underdogs are not barking for Mark.
For Mark, I got the heavy favorite for a reason. I feel like, as I was saying, Walt Harris's biggest folly was his gas tank. I think that he's corrected that in his last fights, but his striking has been looking so on point, and Godbeer has really not won a fight against Spitz, who just knocked out, who was it? Harris? No, not Harris.
Henrique.
No.
De Silva.
Spitz, the heavyweight.
De Silva?
Hamilton. Anthony Hamilton. Anthony Hamilton
one
in
of
one punch.
Fat bellies.
Yeah, so he lost to a submission versus Justin Ledet in his debut in the UFC, and that was because Justin Ledet was picking him apart with that boxing. He shot in, and a really bad shot. It left his neck out there. Ledet jumped for a guillotine. Ledet doesn't have too many finishes by the ground, or he causes those to happen because he wears people out. I feel like Harris can do that to Godbeer all day. I don't think Godbeer, as for and too many people in the division, can take the type of punches that Harris is throwing out in the first round. I got Harris TKO round 1. I'm going to sprinkle him on some. He is scary because anybody at this division can be knocked out, but I think Top Team has really gotten his game together, and I got Harris on some, not all, but I got Harris TKO. What do you think?
Godbeer comes out throwing in that first round, and I have to think that Walt Harris's team has told him to be a little aware of that and play a little safe that first round. I have Harris for all the same reasons. I just have a KO round 2. I don't think Mark Godbeer's full of technique or anything. I think he just throws. He's heart, and he comes out punching. So he is dangerous in that first round, and because they are so enormous, and he is a well-built guy, he does lose full steam in his fights and full power in his fights, and the punches become less and less between. Gosh, I'm nervous about Walt Harris here.
That's why I'm sprinkling him on DK. He's not on everything.
I agree.
Not on everything.
I think he's definitely a pepper sprinkle on DK. You put him on a few cards because he's going to be worth a lot of points if he finishes. Godbeer is just that iffy guy.
Yeah.
It's crazy how cheap Godbeer is on this fight. I think he's the cheapest. I think he's
down at the bottom.
7 or 7-1.
He's down at the bottom.
Yeah, he's really cheap. Here, I have it open on my other screen. I can actually...
And Mark Godbeer is going to actually be...
7 even.
Yeah. And John Moraga is, again, that 6'9". It's just unreal that John Moraga is down that low when he has an average of 53 points.
So, yeah, Walt Harris KO. If we're both saying Walt Harris, maybe... however you listen to the show and what your little, I always go with the Beans' third pick of everything. And I always say when they agree on the 5th fight, I always pick. I don't know what your own betting stuff is, but we both do like Walt Harris. I just think Godbeer has that if factor.
Ooh.
It's iffy.
Not the good if.
I don't know. I'm going to have Godbeer on one single card.
I agree that I'll sometimes put in those weird fights that are coin flips the other way and stack them in a couple fights like that. And you might not win, or if you do win, that's where because nobody has those. Just a little tip there. Moving on to the next fight, we're in the preliminaries with Pearl Gonzalez returning after her loss to Cavillo against newcomer, a debut with Paulina Botelho, and the 5-1 prospect is debuting in the UFC, fighting out of Brazil. She's 28 years old at 5'8". Pearl Gonzalez being 31 years old and 5'4". Is definitely going to have a bit of a reach disadvantage, but we don't have the statistics yet specifically on the reach for the debut fighter in Botelho. So Pearl Gonzalez is coming off as a 6-2 record as of late, only losing to one of the biggest hype trains in the UFC, sitting with Dana White. Cavillo Pearl Gonzalez came in on 2 weeks' notice because an opponent fell out for Cavillo, and I think Gonzalez made a hell of a showing. She showed that she has fight in there. She did gas, but we can't really gauge that gas tank yet, because even though she's gassed in other fights, now she knows with fighting Cavillo what her gas tank should be for in the UFC, knowing Cavillo is a contender because Alpha Male has gotten her there and they know how to make it, and I feel like Pearl is going to take a huge step up in competition level here because of being on the ground and realizing what she can do. Montelo's got debut jitters. She's going to be a little shaky. I do like Montelo's spinning heel kick. She is long for the division. She is a little bit gangly. She is coming out of Nova União, so she has the very Nova União style of striking. Good straight punches. Doesn't move her head as much. Okay, sprawl and brawl. Her ground game isn't bad at all. Didn't really see it much out of the Brazil scene as well. They do tend to have a better female division, but it's still not UFC caliber, and we still know the United States is a mecca. With Gonzalez coming out of the Combat Dojo in Illinois, I feel like I've also heard Gonzalez trains with other good camps up there now that she's had a fight in the UFC, and I'm going to give Gonzalez a split decision type of fight. I think that she could keep it standing, or not keep it standing, go to the ground, and end up winning there by just holding her. Montelo's most dangerous on the feet, and I feel like this is going to be a scrappy, grinding fight. I could see a pretty good output happen in this fight. Both of the women throwing punches from the hip by the end of the third round. So I could sprinkle one or the other. I think this is a split decision, though. I think Botelho is going to be a contender. She's fun to watch in the ring, and she's going to take a big step up in competition. She has everything under her that should help her. Nova União, Gadelha coming out of Nova União, like, she also has that alpha male-esque tutelage coming in. So, I'm kind of talking myself out of Gonzalez a little bit here. I think I might stay away from it a lot on DK. There's other money to be made. I got Gonzalez by a split decision. What do you think is going on with this one?
I had Gonzalez earlier in the week by a submission round 2. Now I have totally different now, and just because of this division, we seem to see the newcomer get the spoils. This division specifically. When somebody brand new walks into it, they wreck house. We're all surprised, like, damn, who is this Joanna girl? Damn, who's this Cavillo girl? Damn, like, when we don't know somebody, they just come in and school us, and I'm going to think this is going to happen again for Botelho now. You're right, Nova União, Gadelha, Brazil, steroids. Oh, wait, I didn't say that. I didn't say any of that. I'm sorry. I rolled that back in. But I think she's a slight favorite for a reason. Brazil fighters, there tends to be a little more knowledge in the scene that we all have collectively about their past fights. It's not like if you see a newcoming Russian fighter, it's like you can't find anything on YouTube about it. So Gonzalez, meh. I think Cavillo's kind of a hype train. I like her, but she's an older newcomer that no one talks about, her age, Cynthia. So, yeah, I didn't think Pearl Gonzalez looked great. I think Botelho is going to go in. I think split decision the same way. So it could go either way.
Exactly.
But I think that being said, you're only going to lose that 15 points for the decision, or the 20 points. I don't know what they give for the decision victory. But it's going to be such high output. If the fighters are cheap enough, either one might be worth it to put on your card, depending on price. And I would sprinkle them on, but don't put them everywhere. But I think they might be worth it.
a light sprinkle. Like
the
if you're having butter
115
popcorn,
women always throw 1,000 punches.
That's what I could see when I went back because we got a little extra time. It is a higher output and they gas because they throw a lot. So I could see it's a light spring. If you're on a diet and you're at the movies, you get the light. Don't believe it's not butter, and you lightly touch it. You get half a spray.
A scotch.
Yeah, exactly. So don't get it twisted. Don't tell us, oh, you told me to put them all over it. Nope. Moving on to the next fight, we have a lightweight bout at 155 pounds. Lando Venata versus Bobby Green. Bobby Green coming off of a 3-fight losing streak, being 23-8, and Lando Venata coming off of a loss to his last opponent and being 9-2. His only loss coming in the UFC, being undefeated prior to debuting against Tony Ferguson and losing to a darts choke in one of the fights of the year. If you want to just see striking and creativeness at its best, watch that fight in 2016. It's always a fight. You'll always just be amazed. Lando Venata actually had Tony Ferguson rocked for a bit, and he came in on like 2 days' notice, 3 days' notice. Bobby Green is fighting out of Pinnacle MMA out of California. He is a slight underdog, or somewhat heavy underdog at 100 and plus 170 to Lando Venata's moderate favorite, minus 220, coming out of Winklejohn. Bobby Green is going to be an inch taller and have a 1.5-inch reach disadvantage. Lando Venata coming in with some long monkey arms. He's got some of them ape arms that he drags his knuckles as he walks around. Lando Venata being the 6 years younger than Bobby Green. I think Bobby Green is right in the sweet spot of his peak. Bobby Green, though, is a fighter who fights to the potential of his opponents for me a lot of the time and comes up short because he tends to get in his own head when he fights. He's notorious for shaking off a punch and saying that didn't hit, smiling, saying hit me, showboating in the fight, and I feel like that gives him a false sense of security in the fight, and he gives up a round where the other fighter maybe will throw a 6-punch combination, and Bobby Green assumes because he dodged almost all of those punches, he should get the scoring there. And we know judges notoriously do not award that type of fighting. And Bobby Green hasn't seemed to change that. He boxes. He really likes his boxing. Is out on the lead leg really well. But he tends to bend at the hip and use a Philly shell style of boxing in there. He has good takedown defense. Is an athlete and awkward. He has okay power, but really hasn't been putting people even down too much. If anything, he's been more notorious for getting up after getting rocked a lot, which means he gets hit. So Bobby Green has deceptively low output, and I don't think there's any value in Bobby Green. I know he is the underdog, but the output where Venata is coming from, I think that, as you say multiple times over, we got one guy going down, one guy going up on the UFC trajectory scale, and unfortunately I think Bobby Green might do better at a Bellator, have his name carry him to make even more money than he's making now, because he ain't getting paid enough to fight a Lando Venata style of fighter right now, where Lando Venata is in his career. I think Venata is going to come in and try to get the finish. He will slow down as well, but both of these fighters tend to slow down. What I am not certain in is the knockout is going to come. Bobby Green is very elusive in his striking style, and that's what's deceptive, and also his output is the elusivity of... is that a word?
I think so. It sounded all right.
Against Bobby Green. And I think it's going to be a decision. I know a lot of people are going to be saying Venata's going to get a knockout because of his spinning attack and his dramatic finishes against Modesty, which I've been saying anybody in there will finish him like that. The fact that he did lose as of late against Tamura, who's an underrated fighter, I think people are putting they need to just slow down on that first fight against Ferguson on Venata. I think this is a decision for Venata, but I think there's better plays to be made throughout the night. How do you feel this one's going down?
I see it being a knockout for Venata. If this is what my hopes are for him at Jackson Wink, is that he's coachable right now. And I noticed that a lot of, regardless of game plan or regardless of audience love, and you got a guy exciting like Venata, the Jackson Wink camp tends to play it a little slow. It's only a 3-round fight. If he listens, he'll keep himself out of harm's way, and he should win handedly here. I think he is so young. Bobby Green has the experience and the ground game on him. Bobby Green's not going to use any ground game here. He's going to try to stand and throw. And he does have the Philly shell, front leg out. I think Venata picks apart that front leg in the first round, and I can see something crazy happening and him actually getting a knockout. To me, Venata's only 2 losses are against 2 of my favorite guys in the division. One, El Cucuey, Tony Ferguson, which on short notice.
3 days notice.
Then he actually looked amazing in the fight. And the other one against David Timur, who I think David is an up-and-comer, one to watch, somebody crazy in the division. So Venata, to me, is definitely one to watch. I got to think he's even grown more since all of those fights with a win in between. I am going to have him on a few. I see him KO at the end of round 2. Something crazy.
So Venata is going to end up being 8,800. Again, if there's value there, it is on Venata.
Yeah, I don't think you put Bobby Green anywhere.
If there's a finish, it's more than likely Venata. So, moving on to the next fight, we got late breaking news. Will Brooks versus Nick Lentz is officially called off due to medical issues. Nick Lentz. Weight cut. We were going to say Nick Lentz is getting old, but Will Brooks is coming in and UFC wants to get him up after a 2-fight winning streak. We don't need to get there. We got enough other fights on the board. This is why they had a 13-fight card, because as of late, a lot of fights have been falling out because of new USADA and new weight cutting issues, and that's why we like to watch the weigh-ins to see how people look. We didn't even get to see Nick Lentz. He called out like an hour before. He was probably a few pounds over. Can't wait to hear what the excuse was. Probably an illness. So,
sinusitis.
Sinusitis. Moving on to the next fight at bantamweight, we're going to the 135 pounds. Tom Duquesnoy versus Cody Stamann. We got Fire Kid versus Spartan as well. I don't think he's Spartan. Is he Spartan? That's his nickname for Stamann, but I'm gonna go with Stamann.
I think we've talked about it
before. So Fire Kid, we're gonna go with Fire Kid is 15-1, coming out of France, being at John Winklejohn. He's gonna have a no inch reach advantage because we don't have the stats on Stamann, but they're both coming in at 5'7". The younger fighter is the Fire Kid, Duquesnoy, at 24 to Stamann's 27. Stamann's actually moving down. He debuted short notice against Terrion Tupperware, coming in also 15-1, getting his win in the UFC in a 3-round decision. I feel like he came in short notice and was up at 145 pounds. Got to see Stamann weigh in earlier. I was iffy about his weight cut. Earlier I said watch out for that. He looked unbelievably shredded. At 145, he looked like Sean Shirk. At 135, he looked like Sean Shirk with no water in his body. He's going to be $150, $145, if not more by that time comes around. Duquesnoy looked good at 5'7". Definitely, you can tell that there's a muscle difference in the two. Stamann being very powerful, coming in with a good ground game. Duquesnoy, coming out of France, has been at Winklejohn, so you know he's getting the best training partners that he can get. They don't have the lightest guys in there, but Winklejohn just knows how to get athletes ready for fights. So Duquesnoy is coming off of a knockout against Patrick Williams, and Patrick Williams is no longer in the UFC. I feel like that was a setup fight. A lot of people have been talking about Duquesnoy a long time before he got into the UFC, like 2-3 years ago. Finally came in, and I think people need to pump the brakes a little bit because debuting against Patrick Williams isn't even middle. That's the bottom of the barrel. Pat Williams didn't get picked up because Pat Williams notoriously gasses, but is incredibly athletic and has good punching power. It was a scrappy fight. Pat Williams put in a good showing, but he tends to do that as well. And we saw how the wrestling can stifle a bit of Duquesnoy's strikes. Really love the elbow attack. A lot of these Winklejohn guys and people in general starting to realize those elbows. Duquesnoy throws them right off of the clinch really well. He likes to push people up against the fence, throwing over the top elbow, has very crafty striking, switches stance as well. An athletic guy. Stamann, with his wrestling though, he's got a quick shot. He throws it over the top right, very alpha male style, even though he's coming out of a Michigan top team. I have to think that he probably comes down to Florida a bit, being affiliated with the top team and now being in the UFC. It's funny how once they get to the UFC, Florida says, "Oh yeah, you can come down here."
Is Michigan top team with American top team?
Yeah, there's the top team franchise.
Oh, I thought it would be a Michigan
American top team. Ooh, maybe you're right on that.
Because I think it's American top team, Michigan, American top team, Florida, American top team. I don't know though.
Nope, you're probably right. So I'm probably just making all that up. 15-1 for Stamen though. In the States, I know Duquesnoy had a little bit of success over in France where it's legal, so he was fighting in the European scene. So Stamen, I feel like, is the more vetted fighter here. His gas tank showed on short notice. He's in the pocket puncher and has power. His takedowns are going to be vital in this fight. I think Duquesnoy is more likely to win this fight, but I think this is a decision. A lot of people have this being a finish, and I think Stamen will lose this fight, but it's going to be an honorable showing, and there's going to be points of lulling where it's going to be wrestling, just holding Duquesnoy down, trying to slow him down, and I see a decision happening 29-28, if not 30-27 for Duquesnoy, but I'm not on the whole hype train that he's going to knock Stamen out because Patrick Williams is also known to have a iffy chin. And what do you feel like is going down in this fight?
I think it's going to be a technical knockout, stoppage. I see him on top with elbows. The thing about this, I think it's a silly setup for the UFC. I think they could take Cody Stamen and run far with them and do this fucking a year from now, 2 years from now, and have a better fight with two guys that are potential stars for you in the division. So I think it's crazy to just cap one off at the knees right now. And I do think they're doing that to Cody Stamen. I just don't think he has the experience, even though both guys are just have a fight in the UFC. I think Duquesnoy has been around higher level caliber fighters for a little longer period of time. They're both young guys. It does make me a little nervous that Stamen does fight typically at a higher weight class, so that makes me a little nervous. I do have Duquesnoy KO round 3. I'm not going to go hardcore on him, though. I agree. I don't think we know enough about him to all of a sudden be like, this guy's the next Max Holloway. Yeah.
And I think Stamen proved that he is UFC caliber. He looked good against Tupperware, and I feel like Tupper, that's my own nickname for Tupperware, by the way, for Darian Ware, is that it's like Styles. Tupperware is a striker like Duquesnoy. I think that this, again,
it's going to be a good fight.
Lat B play. Sneaky Lat B play. Maybe not on Stamen, but just don't put your eggs in the basket.
On a card.
I agree with that. I think that for the value that he's going to have in the night.
If I'm trying to fill in a couple of other expensive ones, I might put him on one of my cheaper cards.
Right. What is Stamen valued at? He's going to come in at 7,100 compared to Duquesnoy's 9,100. I
think there's value in Stamen on that.
I would agree. That would go on the wager gauger.
There it is. Glad you hung around. Glad you hung around.
So Stamen is definitely on our wager gauger. Value all day in that because I think it's likely to go to a decision. But moving on to the next fight, we're moving on to the main card.
Before we get into the main card, make sure you subscribe to wherever you find us. Follow us on Twitter at Lesbo and the Bean. And for all things Lesbo and the Bean, lesboandthebean.com. LaTB.
Evan Dunham versus Beneil Dariush at 155 pounds. We have two veterans now. One being an up-and-coming prospect. Evan Dunham having trials and tribulations, but a good record. Evan Dunham being one of those Bruce Wayne characters to me always.
We had a rough start to the show today. It was like a slow locomotive, but I feel like we're in our stride now.
I think it's going pretty well.
It was like, I think we were so depleted, like we had flat tires from losing our show again, like having all the rough stuff with the hurricane. It's been a month.
Yeah,
we've had a month here in Florida.
And we got weather on the way.
So. We got weather on the way. You don't even know the windstorms we have. We live right on, water, and you don't even know it's the erosion, and it's just like constant, and not to take away from the tragedies happening elsewhere in the world, but anyways. I feel like we're in our stride. Dunham.
So,
Dariush.
Dunham.
I'm patting us on the back.
Thank you. It feels really good. Dunham coming off of a last fight a year ago against Rick Glenn in a decision where it was a total beatdown. Dunham also coming in at the 35 years old to the 28-year-old Dariush. Dariush is going to be the reach advantage with 72 inches. Both fighters are going to come in at 5'10". Dariush coming off of a gnarly knockout of the year potential finish with a brutal knee against Edson Barbosa's flying knee counter, where Dariush was winning that fight. Edson Barbosa was wilting like you have to wilt him. Dariush was keeping a hell of a pace on him, and there was a beautiful breakdown online that was showing just Dariush kept throwing a jab, going for the takedown, throwing a jab, going for a takedown, and he must have thrown it 5 or 6 times. Edson Barbosa timed it perfectly, threw that knee, and I don't care who you are, that's putting you to sleep. Doesn't matter the type of chin you have. That type of a knee perfectly countered just shows the level of danger that Edson Barbosa is and why caliber fighters can only really beat him. Dariush, I do think, is a caliber fighter, and Evan Dunham, I think, is slowly on the way out. He does have a fight a year ago against Glenn. Glenn is much lower competition, even though Dunham has a bit of that Bruce Wayne character, as I was saying before, mentality. He's an investment bond or some sort of banker in Wall Street and does trades and makes way more money, and or did. I don't know if he still does it, but now he was at one point in time also the Team Alpha Male head coach, a lifelong martial artist, and does it because he loves it, which is always hard to. That's a Michael Bisping. That's somebody that you're never going to walk through. Evan Dunham's in there to win every single fight because he doesn't need the UFC for money, where other people say, I want to get paid. He doesn't give a shit. He is getting paid. He just loves to fight and is a true competitor. Always admire about him. He is the 18-6 fighter, only losing in his last 5 fights. That was a while ago against Edson Barbosa in a TKO loss. Both of these fighters have that shared loss. Dunham, I think, is very, very underrated here. He is, again, all of that craftiness and above. His gas tank does wear a bit more. I think Dariush, being the younger fighter, his gas tank still can grow, where we've seen the cap for Dunham, and it is a high output. I think that there's value in Dunham on DK, and there's also value in Dariush, because if there is a finish, I see it coming Dariush's way. Dariush has been knocked out 2 nasty times also 4 fights ago against Ramsey Nijum, where he ate a disgusting overhand right sandwich and went completely to sleep. So he came back from that twice already, and I think that's proof to Dariush's complete essence as a fighter as well. He's also does it because he loves it. He's also a really intelligent guy, and he came back on a 2-fight winning streak after that brutal knockout. Oh, wait, never mind. Last loss prior to that being to Chiesa in a submission. Chiesa's ground game underrated. But then he beat James Vick in an awesome fight, and also a Magomedov, and that was a young up-and-coming prospect in a decision. So I think Dariush rebounds from this. His King's training is elite striking. His ground game, he's X-level black belt, notoriously been a jiu-jitsu guy who's got his striking to point. But I feel like it's one of those things that we say here all the time on the show is these guys that are elite on the ground always fall in love with their hands because they knock a couple people out, and then they go against an elite striker like Edson Barbosa and think that they're going to be able to outstrike him, and it doesn't work out because that's all Edson Barbosa's been doing his whole life. Yep, his whole life. So I think Dariush keeps growing. It is a hard-fought decision. This is a coin flip of a fight, though. I don't think that it's fair that the minus 250, there's no value in Dariush here because Evan Dunham is sneaky. He hits you with the type of punch you don't see coming, and Dariush hasn't seen him coming before. Cautious play for me. I got Dariush, not as confident as most bettors out there. How confident are you in this fight?
Let's see. We got Dariush at 9. I have to say about that 9,000 on DraftKings. No way, no day. Not on Beneil Dariush. For me, I got Dunham decision on this. He's looked really good in his last 4 fights. He's been on a rebound. It seems like he's figured it out. I do know the guys that he's won the last 4 fights against, but Joe Lozon, Ross Pearson. But that being said, those are friggin' wars the last few fights he's been in. Dariush can't really say the same, except for the James Vick fight. To me, that was his best looking fight. And James Vick is underrated as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, yeah.
I just think we're going to see, this is kind of, not to take anything away from Dunham, because I am going to have him on some cards. I do think he's a sneaky underdog pick. I'm not going to let the crowd sway me on this to Beneil Dariush. I really like him as a fighter. I think he has tons of room to grow. I just don't think this is going to be an exciting fight as you see. I think Beneil's going to try to stand, like you're saying, and I don't think you can just do that with Evan. And I also think Evan has an okay ground game, okay takedown defense. He's going to be okay everywhere enough that if he can wear Beneil out, and at his age, he knows exactly what to expect out of his body if he's still fighting at this age. And he's one of the guys that actually looks better from 33 on than he did for that in-between normal peak years. So I'm going to pick Evan Dunham. I think it's kind of going to be a boring decision, but I do think he's kind of a safe pick to afford some more expensive fighters if you want to change up your cards. So this is a
split decision type of fight. I think key there is a decision. Either way, we don't see a finish coming, so if there's a bet to be made, it's probably on that decision. Pick which either fighter. Yeah. Great. I think these are things that we use to get first place in DK. These are our tactics that are proven.
Yeah, we don't have to worry about elevation here. We don't have to worry about hometown favorites. We don't have to worry, we're in Vegas where...
Right, our 10 commandments.
Yeah. And then we move into the fight that makes the least amount of sense.
So this
on
is
the main event.
On the pay-per-view itself. This is a bout that was all of a sudden put on the card because they brought in another fighter who had to take a 6-month pooling test in the UFC after the UFC had already put her on the card with KGB, Angela Lee, out of the Invicta, being a title contender out there. She's a striker, but she's blonde bombshell, and she has a great Gaethje-esque style of fighting. So she got popped at the day after she got put on the card, and she was going to fight Kindara Fiera versus, and she's going to be fighting in the UFC here, Mara Renault Barella. And KGB dropped, so Barella stepped in. But this being a double debut,
Double D's.
On such a 216 fight, is it Dana White being a little scornful and being like, hey, Demetrius Johnson, here you go. I'm going to stack your pay-per-view with this fight. And then blame the buys on DJ like he likes to do for wagering purposes because DJ wants more money.
Well, this isn't DJ's card he's carrying. I think El Cucuey Lee is more than enough favor for DJ to get some paper. I think the biggest favor he could have done was move DJ off the main event.
Ooh, interesting.
I think El Cucuey Lee pulls more audience than
interim belt versus real belt.
Borg.
And breaking records. I don't know if you've been watching any of the countdown or anything, but they've kind of not talked about breaking the record at all.
Not at all.
Nope, not even a little bit.
They're like, no, we'd rather keep Anderson Silva.
Yeah, we'll keep the interim belt on top. I mean, it's a better fight, but moving on to the double debut with Barella versus Fiera. Barella being 11-4 out of Italy, only having, I believe, one fight in the United States, maybe a couple. She has one split decision over Dudilieva, who is a UFC former contender who was dropped because she was like 2 or 3-0 in the 125 division. And just, if you think about Dudilieva, she has seen UFC caliber fights and wasn't able to pick it up at the 125 division, which they've been lacking in. I think actually she was fighting at 135 and Dudilieva went down to 125, but that's her most prominent win 2 months ago. And Fiera is coming off of a 18-5 record, losing to split decisions to people like Karolina Kavakovic and Claudia Gadelha at one point in time. Also, Jessica Aguilar in a decision. That caliber and resume of fighter, it was prior to UFC, but that's still elite level, and those women were on their way to becoming the masters they are now, and it's not easy to go to decision with those type of fighters. Fiara being 31 years old to the 31-year-old Barella. Both of these women are a bit taller for the 125 division. 5'5" for Fiera, 5'6" for Barella.
This is the very first fight at the women's 125 division.
In history?
Yeah. And now think about that. These two fighters, first 125 fight. No one's talking about it. It just dawned on me right this second.
Is that why they're promoting it?
It just dawned on me right this second. That's why it's on the main card. And no offense to these two women.
Though I would say that these women are going to be title contenders. Whoever's the champ after this season.
It was supposed to be PVZI, no?
But all these things have fallen out. But what I'm thinking though with these women, is that they are better. Being 11-4 at 125 is still a lot of fights.
I agree. I just don't think 125, the weight class is how we've seen them in the UFC. The best women, they're fighting at 135 or 115.
Yeah. Either way, with the
this is probably a disappointing opening for their division.
Debut.
This isn't how they pictured it.
This is actually, I think it can be a sneakily good fight because they're
is it
both
for
gonna
a
make
belt?
a show. The interim 125.
Yeah, there's only two people in the division. One of them gets the interim. One of them gets the championship belt. The loser gets the interim.
And then the champ doesn't want to defend. Oh, this is 145. I mean,
then he's gonna go box. She's gonna go box.
Yeah. So, back to Fiera has power in the pocket. Little bit. They're both long. They both use their range. The head movement is more favored toward Fiera. Barella, I really didn't see much head movement. She really has good combinations of straight punches, but she leaves her head on the center line. And Fiera just gets out of the way a little bit more. Bad takedowns by Fiera, but she does use a lot of trips, and at the caliber of fighters she has been fighting against, it did work against early on. What is really bad with the trips that I really didn't like about Fiera was they were sloppy, that when they got to the ground, women that had better hips than her would all of a sudden get on top, and she'd be in half mount, full mount, side mount, and then she'd have to escape from those positions or fight it off. She got a couple submissions there, but against caliber fighters, that's going to be exploitable eventually. Might not be Barella yet, but I think that's
we can't waste any more time on this.
Oh, really?
There's 3 good fights left to talk about.
So
are
also
you going to put one of these girls all over their DraftKings?
Nope, I got Fiera in a decision. So
I'm on a time crunch.
Oh, okay.
I'm on a time crunch. I'm like, damn, we're talking about these two bitches too long.
All right, moving on to the heavyweight bout at 265 versus Fabricio Verdum versus Derek Lewis. We got Verdum coming off of a loss as of late. He's 21-7-1 against Derek Lewis is 18-5. 32 years old against the 40 Verdum, and the reach advantage is going to go to the Black Beast. Black Beast was just recently retired 3 months ago. He ended up hurting his back. And for essentially since like 10 fights ago, somehow he got better in 3 months. Must have been helping people out in the Hurricane because he's been training minimally because he's out doing great things and helping a lot of good people. But I got to think that takes time into his day where Fabricio Verdum is top contender material, losing a decision, controversial against Alistair Overeem. A lot of people think Verdum won. I could argue that as well. Then previous to that, waiting a decision over Travis Brown, but he had the belt, is a former title contender, and lost the belt to Miocic, and he's already said it himself multiple times over. Fabricio Verdum ran in crazily, ended up getting caught at the end of a punch. You could see he was swinging wild. He said that the moment got to him, and I do think that Verdum has proven in his last 2 fights. I think he won that Overeem fight and has shown that he's not just going to get into the striking because he realized, like, walking in on these guys, they will put you out. I see Verdum being the vastly superior fighter all the way around, other than the power. Derek Lewis has that tendency to be able to absorb a lot of damage, and when you least expect him to explode, he will throw a switch kick on you. Heavyweights don't do that. Derek Lewis does that. The only thing that cost him in that fight is his gas tank, and I feel like Verdum has its style and credentials also coming out of King's MMA to get the finish in the fight. I think Verdum wears him out in the first 2 rounds. After that first round, even after those first 2 minutes, Derek Lewis's chances start to diminish vastly. I got Verdum TKO round 3, ground and pound, if not leg kicks to a finish. How do you feel this one's going down?
I feel for all the same reasons you do, but I have Verdum submission round 2. I think he gets on the ground, grounds and pounds them, and then just flips it to a submission. Derek Lewis does give up after 2 to 3 minutes of the fight. The gas tank totally runs out, and I think he's a guy that's just coming in for a paycheck and really like, all right, I'll get a big 50 grand to get knocked out, which is not great for the brain, but I think that's his fighting career at this point. And going in against a guy like Verdum, and no offense to Derek Lewis, I've always loved him. I just don't even think he has near the experience Verdum has inside the octagon. So I think Verdum's an easy pick for all over your DraftKings. Either way, submission, TKO, KO. I think he finishes in round 2.
Moving on to the co-main event, we're going at the 101.25 rescheduled bout between Demetrious Johnson, Ray Borg. If you've listened to our other shows, you definitely know how we feel, and I don't feel like that's going to change at all. If anything, it gives me more... Actually, initially I thought that I was going to pick Demetrious Johnson more, but when I thought about it after the fact that, hey, Ray Borg wants to get him at 100%, I do think Ray Borg's going to be coming in better than he did last fight with supposed illness or whatever was going on. And... I still see this all the way around going to Demetrious Johnson. What is there to say? The best, he's about to break the records. Ray Borg is going to be a title contender from this point on. He's going to grow from this fight, and eventually it's going to be fun to see him move up to 135, but he will eventually get there. Demetrious Johnson's going to have a couple more fights and retire. I got submission round 4 only because I watched the embedded episodes, and Demetrious himself said, I got submission round 4. If him and Matt Hume say, we're going to tire this guy out by round 3 because he's never been 5 and done well, he knows that. Demetrious Johnson has the latest submissions, latest finishes, latest whatever. He knows how to break down a fight. How do you feel this one's going down?
Whoa, I have Johnson submission round 3 right now. I don't think there's anything else I need to hate on Ray Borg about. I really like him as a fighter. I'm just over him at 125. He's really wrecked a lot of fight cards for me in the past. So I'm going to pick Johnson. I think he's our champ. I think he breaks the record. I think he needs a little more cred for breaking the record. It's a shame. Hopefully the UFC has something planned for after he does it. And I'm looking forward to watch Demetrious Johnson fight at 135, and I might even be interested in seeing this fight again at 135. But I think Demetrious finishes a little sooner than even he thinks, because I think he is that much better than Ray Borg even knows. Because every single time his game changes and expands, Demetrious just keeps growing. He seems like a super hard guy to study tape on, because everything's just a little different in the ring, and he finishes like a crazy different finish.
And he doesn't get the respect. He doesn't get it, and he finishes everybody.
So I think Johnson, submission round 3. DJ, Mighty Mouse.
Moving on to the main event, we have Tony Ferguson versus Kevin Lee, the Motown Phenom versus El Cucuey. El Cucuey coming on 20-3. Kevin Lee being 16-2. The reach and height advantage is going to go to the 6-foot Ferguson 76-inch reach to Kevin Lee's 5'9", 75.5-inch reach. Kevin Lee's got some long-ass arms. He's dragging them knuckles on the ground. Both of these fighters have been on a good winning streak. I think Kevin Lee's been that 8 or 9 range. He's been fighting top contenders. I think the Prezeres fight is very telling. He also beat young up-and-coming fighters like Jake Matthews and Mayastev Trinaldo. And then as of late, controversial submission over Chiesa. Chiesa more than likely was going out. It was an early stoppage. But for all intents and purposes, Kevin Lee has submitted multiple other people with much less chokes, with the chokes not being as deep as they were on Chiesa. So it was a matter of time. It happens. Tony Ferguson coming in, being a complete weirdo, getting in fights with Verdum prior to this fight going on, having a great gas tank, being ultra unorthodox. Definitely, if there's somebody that's hard to study for, it is Tony Ferguson. Coming also out of that 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu style, he is always innovating, loves to use his elbows, has a notoriously good pace, does tend to get hit a bit in fights because he is so wild, but he's so wild because he's also so confident on the ground. Kevin Lee is a wrestling traditionalist. He really uses a lot of body locks, has a wonderful double leg takedown, penetrates well, times it well, mixes it in with his striking. is a little prone to using his boxing, or was earlier in his career. Funny, Jack Slack on his podcast said Kevin Lee talked to him a long time ago when he started the podcast, asking him about his striking, and he actually saw what his advice was, which was how to transition his punches into. It's all wonderful stuff. On the ground, though, with that 10th plan being discipled with Ferguson, he's always going to be throwing up tons of stuff, does a lot of omoplatas, a lot of spinning Granbies, gets his back taken. The scary thing is, but any one of these fighters gets hurt in his fight. Kevin Lee always gets hurt in a fight. There's never a fight that you don't see him shake. He comes, he gets with it quick and can be in the fight within seconds. And that's where he catches people, because they'll come in and he'll take an advantageous position. But if there's a person to take advantageous positions and flow with every position, it is Tony Ferguson. The better wrestler here is Kevin Lee, and I feel like his game plan is going to be take him down, wear him out in the first couple rounds. But we see actually Tony come on later in the rounds. He's been in multiple 5-round fights. I feel like Dos Anjos, even though he was gassed at 155 pounds, is still a 5-rounder that's better than Kevin Lee. Kevin Lee is an up-and-comer, and a lot of people are bringing in a lot of hype. I do think this is a much closer fight than I initially thought. I do think Kevin Lee has great snap-down defense, and if you watch BJJ Scout type stuff, has a great breakdown on both of their ground games. The perfect counters to what Kevin Lee wants to do as well is Granby standing switches, and that's what Tony Ferguson loves to do. Create a scramble, come out on top, even if he's out on bottom. Imanari rolls. This is going to be fun, but after the first round, I think Lee has notoriously shown us that he does gas, and I feel like this is going to go into the later rounds, and Tony Ferguson's going to put the pace on. Those elbows are going to hurt. Kevin Lee's striking is down the pipe and does have power, but there is ways that we've seen. He's still a young fighter. I think he moves up and is going to be a potential contender from now on. But I could even see Lee moving up to 170 in his career. He is the 24 years old or 25 years old, just turned 25. He still has a lot. He's a mega athlete, but athleticism and mass is going to hurt him. All these fighters did make weight. Real quick, Ray Borg did make weight at 124. I think we talked about it earlier. I got Ferguson submission round 5. How do you feel this one goes down?
I got Ferguson submission round 4. I do not think Lee is ready for this challenge. I do think he will be ready for this challenge one day. I think the worst thing he could do in this fight would be come in dependent on his boxing. And I think he's going to get caught in quotes by Lee, that weak-ass Darce choke. The Lee's style of takedown, how he grabs and slams, is the perfect takedown to get somebody in a Darce when you're super long. So it's really interesting. El Cucuey is ready for this fight. He was ready for Khabib, and I think Khabib's I would rather actually see Lee versus Khabib. I think that is a super friggin' interesting
fight. That's a wrestler
versus
American wrestler.
I actually think that Khabib's the better fighter. I think Ferguson would have beat Khabib. Why wouldn't I think he'd beat Lee? So I'm looking forward to El Cucuey, and I'm looking forward to the reign of El Cucuey. So I will have El Cucuey all over my DraftKings. And that being said, I will have Kevin Lee on a few of my DraftKings as well, because I think they're both going to have high output and anything for the main cards. And because it's a 5-round fight, I don't think you're not going to see an early finish of Kevin Lee. You got to give him some respect, and you got to give him the first 3 rounds of respect, because he does go to decision with big fighters. So I think you can put both these guys in your DraftKings and it'd be pretty safe.
I agree with that totally. I was going to sprinkle that in on a couple sneaky cards, because Kevin Lee does allow you to put on some of these bigger fighters, because we know Dominic Cruz is going to be on everything, so we got to counteract that with
Dominic Cruz ain't going to be on nothing.
Demetrius Johnson, Mighty Mouse.
But that's something, Dominic Cruz, Rivera. We got so much stuff to talk about when we get back.
Exactly.
We might have to do a weekend show. I got a weird schedule coming up this week that I got days off. We might have to give him a Sunday show.
We'll figure it out. But remember to follow us on YouTube and Facebook.
And Twitter. And iTunes. And everywhere that you can. LesBoneTheBean.com.